Your customers are going to say things about you that are dictated by how you show up in the marketplace.
Sure.
So you
Exactly.
have a massive amount of influence on what your customers end up saying about you. And that's important. That's why you need to put a lot of thought into your message, into who you serve, into what type of book you're going to write, into what type of, podcast/video channel you're going to put together. All of those are super, super important.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand.
We've all heard the term thought leader, but what does that really mean? And how do you become a well-known thought leader in your industry? Well, today we're talking with Nicky Billou, an international best-selling author, co-founder of eCircle Academy, and creator of the Thought Leader, Heart Leader designation. Nicky's interviewed over 300 of the world's top thought leaders, and today he's sharing his story with us and the bold moves he's made along the way.
Nicky, welcome to Be Bold Branding.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here with you guys.
Thank you, sir.
The honor is ours.
Yeah, well, pleasure's on this end. We're excited about it. Let's start with something that might be fairly obvious. So, Nicky, let's start with the most obvious thing. Please define thought leader for us in your terms.
That's a great question. The great Matt Church, who's a thought leader out of Australia, has the best definition for it, and I'm going to borrow it. And the best way to define a thought leader is by drawing a sharp distinction between an expert and a thought leader. An expert is someone who knows something. Experts are a dime a dozen. But a thought leader is someone who's known for knowing something. Thought leaders are rare and valuable. Another way to put it is an expert is like a cover band, while a thought leader plays original music. Inside your space, if you're a thought leader, you're the go-to person in your space. Think about a couple of really, really large, well-known computer companies. One of them is Dell Computer. The other one is Apple. Now, back in 1998, both of them were around the same size. They're around $7, $8, $9 billion a year in revenue. One of them was led by a thought leader. The other one wasn't. So the one that was led by a thought leader is now the world's most valuable company. The other company is worth about $80 billion a year in revenue. So would you like to guess who it was the leader of Apple Computer back in those days?
Steve Jobs.
You might know who the leader of Dell Computer was back then. It's Michael Dell. The company was actually named after him, right?
Aha.
But Dell created a company that was really good at building computers, computer parts, and did a great job of getting them out there. Steve Jobs didn't just build a computer company. Steve Jobs built a company that was dedicated to the proposition that men and women with passion could change the world. And that's how he put himself out there. And he kept talking about that. He became known for that. And that's how Apple went from a company that was barely surviving when he got there in 1997, 1998 to the world's most valuable company today. And if you think about it, thought leadership allows you to create a level of brand in your organization that will help you take it to another level. Now, that's true if you're a solopreneur, coach, consultant, speaker, author. You can be known as the go-to person in your space. You can grow your practice from wherever it is to $1, $2, $3, $5, $10 million. And that's also true if you run a company and your company is doing well. It could be a multi-million-dollar company, but maybe it's not doing as well as you want it to be. And if you want it to go to the next level, then we got to work on having your brand, your thought leader brand, be tightly associated with your company, and to build it and put it out there so that, boom, the world knows who you are and your business grows. Because when you've got a thought leader brand, people flock to buy from you. People flock to work for you, and investors flock to give you money. Look at Apple. Look at Elon Musk and the companies that he owns. Elon Musk just bought Twitter, and a whole bunch of people jumped all over being a part of that investment. Now, objectively, is Twitter a great investment? Debatable at best.
It's subjective. It's
Debatable
subjective.
at best. I'm going to say no. Without Elon Musk being involved, Twitter was a terrible investment.
Oh, yeah, it was dead.
With Elon Musk being involved, Twitter's potentially a great investment.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah,
what can
exactly.
happen. So if there's a person listening to this podcast today, let's say they run a trucking company, and let's say it's a $40 million a year trucking company. If they want it to be a $400 million a year trucking company, the best and fastest way for us to do that is for them to have someone like me show them how to create their personal brand, tie it tightly into the company, put a book together for them, put a podcast together and a YouTube channel, have them go on shows like this one and like TV and radio shows and other podcasts, and then just be spreading the gospel of their organization. A good 25-30% of their time needs to be on putting the word out with them tied in as the brand. It's like them being the founder of their organization's great, but a branded founder, a thought leader founder, just takes it to a whole new level.
It does. It does. And, I learned that back in 1988 when I first joined the radio world. I got into radio and I noticed that there were business owners in my market that were like rock stars. Everybody was scrambling to talk to them at different networking events. And they had two things in common. First, they were almost always number one in their industry, in that market. And number two, they were the face and the voice of their business. They were that thought leader. They weren't just talking about what they know. They were leading the charge in that industry, which was a big deal. And that's when I really came to understand how much personal branding can affect a business and a profit of a business. And that's really, why BrandFace exists today in that realm. So totally love that description of the difference between the expert and the thought leader. It's absolutely true. Thought leader is that go-to authority. Let's talk about that for a moment. What does it take? Because I know you mentioned, getting on podcasts and getting your brand dialed in and getting a lot of things. What are the top 2 or 3 things really that it takes to make sure you get to that thought leader position?
Well, first of all, you've got to have an idea of who you're out there to serve, right? Who is it that has the pain points that you and your organization solve? You got to know who that is. You got to know what their pain points are. You got to have a really clear, well dialed in message. If you don't have that, if you got a crappy message, like so many people do, you ask people what they do. Well, we're a trucking company. No, that's not what you do. That's what you think you are, right? Okay, what do you do? Well, what we do is we help organizations that need their stuff moved from here to there, get it there at a great price with fantastic peace of mind. Now, that's a message. That's a message. The first one is not a message. Or if you're some sort of advisor or coach, what do? I help people get rid of overwhelm. What? What does that even mean? Don't you understand what that even means? No, but if you said something like, I help CEOs who've been burning out for the last 3 years to overcome burnout so they can get back on track and run their company the way they did before they burned out. Now, that's the message. You need to have a really good, powerful message, right? So let's just make that step 1. Step number 2, you got to start creating your own platforms to get the message out there. So having a book that's tied in to your overall message and brand message is good. So I got a bunch of books that I've written. If I can show you a few of them here, right?
Yep.
This is a book I wrote, How to Create $1 Million a Year Income. I wrote it with one of my clients. In fact, I helped them write it. This is a political book I wrote, basically to get rid of wokeism and wokeness. This is another book that I wrote, Finish Line Thinking, How to Think and Win Like a Champion. This is a book I wrote called The Thought Leader's Journey. It's written in the form of a fable. It talks about some of these principles in there. And this is a book I wrote, Power of Connecting, How to Create Profitable Relationships by Serving Your Network. Why is it important that I have these books? Well, that's part of my brand.
Credibility.
Nicky Billou is somebody who talks about, networking, connecting, thought leadership, creating $1 million incomes, all that good stuff. So if somebody had a book like that and they're a CEO of an organization, that would help them. Next thing, they ought to create some sort of a podcast and or a YouTube channel or other video channel if they don't want to do it on YouTube, right? Because that's going to help them get their message out in a big and powerful way. So they need that to be consistent with the brand they're creating, consistent with the message in their book. So, If you're a business owner and you really like sports, you can mention sports once in a while in your podcast and in your videos. But if you start creating a video that's all about sports and nothing about your business, it's not going to do so great for you, you know. And then they got to go on shows like yours, radio shows, television shows. They got to be out there and they got to be putting the message out. If they take all these 3 steps with a really, really powerful message, it's well thought out. They don't just haphazard say, okay, I got a book, I got this, I got that. If it all comes together, then they're going to start to get some traction from the marketplace. The marketplace is going to see them and their organization for being the type of organization that stands for this and helps this kind of people. You know, you take a look at Patrick Bet-David of Valuetainment. Do you know him and his channel? So
yeah, I've heard of Valuetainment. Sure.
Yeah. So Patrick Bet-David, before he started Valuetainment, he was an insurance guy. He had an insurance brokerage. You know, he had 200 agents working for him. He was successful. He made a couple million a year. Nothing to sneeze at. But once he started Valuetainment and he wrote 5 books and he started going on other shows himself, he's got 27,000 agents now. This is just in over 10 years. 27,000 agents. He's making $275 million a year. That's a massive jump from 2 million.
Huge.
Absolutely.
And that's what doing this sort of thing can make possible for a CEO.
Yes, yes. We hear that a lot about books and podcasts, and they do position you as an authority. They give you that credibility. And what I love about all of this is that it allows you to create that position, right? I want to know what you think about this, Nicky. A long time ago, somebody said, well, you don't really dictate your brand. Your customers dictate your brand. They tell you what your brand is. How do you feel about that statement?
Well, at a surface level, there's some truth to it. It's true. Your brand is what your customers say about you. But your customers are going to say things about you that are dictated by how you show up in the marketplace. It doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Yes.
They don't just sit down and go, let me see, what do I think about BrandFace? No, they're going to find out what they're going to say about BrandFace based on the types of things you put out in the marketplace.
Sure.
So
exactly.
a massive amount of influence on what your customers end up saying about you. And that's important. That's why you need to put a lot of thought into your message, into who you serve, into what type of book you're going to write, into what type of, podcast / video channel you're going to put together. All of those are super, super important.
Yeah. Agreed. And they have to tie together. I think that's the biggest takeaway. Like you're saying, they have to tie together. If you write a book that doesn't have anything to do with your brand and the direction that you're going, then you haven't, it's good that you wrote the book, but it's not going to help you. You can open up, you can start your podcast. It's the easiest thing in the world. But if it doesn't talk about the core values of what you are, if it doesn't have the message that you're putting out there that you want everybody to remember, to be top of mind awareness, why are you doing it? And we deal with a lot of clients that way, where we have to pull all of that together, because so many people have so many projects going on. We find that to be a phenomenon these days, but it all has to be like pointed at that ideal customer and speaking that ideal customer's language. And if you want it to be powerful, if you want to go from, 2 million a year to 200, what'd you say, 65 million? That's insane. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
What is a charlatan marketer and how can you avoid him or her?
What a great question, eh? So I'll tell you what a charlatan marketer is. A charlatan marketer is somebody who promises everything and delivers nothing. They're really good at selling. They suck at delivery. They just do. I'll tell you a little story if you don't mind. I'm originally an immigrant from the Middle East. I'm a Christian from Iran. And when I was a young boy, the Islamic Revolution was happening in Iran. And my late father, God rest his soul, he could see the writing on the wall and he could see this wasn't going to be a great place for him to raise his Christian family. So he hustled us out of Iran. Eventually we settled in Canada. It was his sister who came to Georgia. And I'm so grateful to him. I'm so grateful because he took us from tyranny to freedom. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's the most important thing in the world. Freedom, free expression, free enterprise. And my father was a big champion of all that as well. He was an entrepreneur, but he was an uplifter of people. If my dad knew you and you were looking for a job, he'd get you a job. If you were trying to start a business, he'd help you start a business. Even if you were going to compete with him, he didn't care about that. He just wanted to help people. You think about that. Who does that, honestly? And if you worked for him and you were looking to buy a car or a house or an apartment and you didn't have enough money, Dad would top you up so you could get that car, that house, or that appointment. And again, I ask you, who does that?
Right.
Well, my dad did that, Nicky Billou, God rest his soul. And why? Well, first of all, he's a Christian. He believed that he'd been blessed by God. And because he'd been blessed by God, he was obligated to share those blessings with others. But secondly, he did it because he could. He had the financial wherewithal to do it. And me, I wanted to be just like that. I wanted to help people. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I thought he was the greatest human being that ever lived, and I still do. And what I saw when I got into the marketplace was there's a lot of good people out there who've created some success for themselves in business, but they're not necessarily business people. They were really good technicians who just were good at what they did, and their business got to a certain level of success. And as a result, sometimes they would not go after business they should go after because they didn't want to come across as pushy or salesy, or like they reeked of commission breath. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's when the charlatan marketer stepped, because they don't care. They're just going to go and grab that business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And why is that bad? Well, it's bad because those good people miss out on the business and they don't get the money they should. It's bad because that client could have been helped by that good person and they're not. And it's bad because that charlatan marketer gets the business and they don't deliver. So that client doesn't get the help, and the charlatan marketer, well, they're just building up a bad karma bank for themselves.
Right.
And what I saw was, this is not good. And I want to help people, good people, understand how to win in business. So I just racked my brain. I go, how can I do that? Because I never had that fear of asking for business, and I thought, wait a minute, it's the word sales. That's the problem here. The word sales is just conjuring up all this negativity in so many good, successful people, right?
Right.
And then I thought, what if we could reframe that word from sales to service? Nobody wants to be sold, guys. You don't want to be sold. I don't want to be sold, right?
Right.
But don't you love to buy, especially from a good, caring person? Like, you ever go to Nordstrom's or Tiffany's, man, the way they treat you there, you love being served by those people. You'll buy the whole store if you had enough money on you.
You do.
You really would. That's really a big part of what I started to teach good people, was how to go from selling to service. Because if you go from selling to service, then it's a lot easier to ask for the business. And the charlatans then don't have an opportunity to get a foothold. You know what I'm trying to say here?
I do.
And so you got to understand that everyone has to understand, listening to this, the first part of that brand message of you is be a good, caring human being. You know, those people sitting in front of you, either you, really you, or your company, and it's sales folks, they're all people. They're all somebody's wife, somebody's sister, somebody's daughter, somebody's husband, somebody's brother, somebody's son. They are a hero to someone, and they've been disappointed by life. Maybe they've even been disappointed by someone or a company just like yours who promised them everything and delivered them nothing. And so it's your job to remember business is first and foremost a people game, not a money game or a numbers game. And I want to say this again, and I want people to write this down. Business is a people game. It's not a money game or a numbers game. And as long as you remember that and you stand steadfast wanting to make a difference for that man or woman, that human being in front of you, you are going to create great success for yourself. And if you're not going to do that, if you're going to be someone who's going to be focused on the numbers and the money, then you won't.
I love it because it is so true. I'm in the real estate business, and I teach my agents that very same thing. I'm like, if you're getting into this because you watch too much HGTV and you think it's just a cool way to do it, you're not in the right business. Like, you have to be a professional first, which means that you're there to serve your clients and help them, even if there's nothing at the end of that. But if you will approach it that way, there will be more at the end of that road than you can spend, because you have to go at it first and foremost. It's about the people. True. It's about the service that you're providing for them. They don't know. They think they know. They don't. You have to, handle them right. You have to learn personalities and stuff. They're probably not attacking you. They're probably not ignoring you. They're probably busy. Like, all of those things that are very important. You have to approach it first and foremost like a service. I love that. Yeah, it's a great takeaway.
And Nicky, what you said about them being disappointed and people and the charlatan marketers out there, if I had a nickel for every time that our team was on the phone with somebody and they expressed that, this has happened to them, people have promised things that they can't deliver, it makes me sad. And it happens all the time. all the time. And it is a pleasure to be able to correct that thought process in somebody. It's like, it makes you feel so good at the end of the day. It's like we've done everything we can to deliver everything we promised. But even better than that, do you feel like we did that? Did that come across in the way we treated you every day? And that's really important. But, one of the projects you're doing, Nicky, I'm really interested in, actually two of them, but tell us a little bit about your two podcasts real quick.
Sure. My first podcast is called The Thought Leader Revolution, and it is a podcast where we interview the top thought leaders in the world and basically ask them to share their secrets of how they got to be where they are. And essentially, what we want to do with those episodes is give people actionable steps and tips that they can take right away, immediately upon listening to the episode, take it into their business and use it right away to make a positive difference for themselves. So I'll give you an example of a couple of folks we've had there. We had Dr. John Maxwell on the show, but he's actually, I think he's originally from Atlanta, although he lives in Florida right now. And on the show, he talked about the importance of leadership and how he walks that talk. He talks about it. He writes books about it. He talks about what it takes to be a successful leader. And if you listen to that episode, there's 5, 6, 7 really good takeaways in that episode that you can take into your business right away. We had Marie Forleo on the show. She used to be Oprah Winfrey's coach. Same with her. 5, 6 really good, actionable things that are in that show. I also do a second episode a week called the Thought Leader Nugget, where it's me for 5 to 10 minutes, and I just take one nugget and I talk about that nugget, and I encourage people to take that nugget and apply it into their business. So that's the first thing we do. Our second podcast is called the Sovereign Man Podcast. It's for men. It's all about helping men in today's crazy world. I think the world has turned against men and masculinity and manhood in a lot of ways. And we want a place where men can come and be around other men and, be appreciated for being a man, have an iron sharpen iron, and, also be held to account for being a man, because that's something that's not done much these days for men. They're being treated in a very feminized way. And I don't think that's good for men at all. It's not good for society. It's not good for the world. There's a little meme video out there, Chinese military recruiting video. A lot of strong, tough men dressed in uniform, military garb, doing, strong military-esque things. You watch that, you're a young man, you go, damn, I want to do that. Then there's the Russian military video, very similar. Again, a lot of strong, tough men. Again, the first one speaking in Mandarin, the second one speaking in Russian, martial music, all that's there. And then there's the U.S. military recruiting video, and there's some soft music. And then there's some wimpy looking dude going, let's talk about pronouns. I'm like, oh my God. That's not good. That's not good.
Well, that was the project I really wanted you to talk about, because it's fascinating. I think it's commendable that you're doing it. And I happen to be, despite how many listeners we may or may not lose from this episode, doesn't matter to me. I stand my ground. You are correct that men need to be men. And I applaud you for that. So
and good men. And I think that's
yes,
we
good,
have this
honorable
conversation.
men.
We have this conversation all the time, and it's very important that men be good men. And I think that's been something lost, for a long time. I quote my grandfather a whole lot. He was a good man. He was a World War II veteran, and he was a good man and had good ethics and morals, and worked hard every day and did well in life and took care of his neighbors, and he lived the life. And so those things really appeal to me. They really do.
Well, I'm glad, and I'll say this to you. I mean, if there's a man that's listening to this and you're feeling a little unsure, unsteady, lost, or you just don't have men in your life, because men need men in their life, and even if you're a married man and you got a solid family and you don't have men in your life that you can go talk to, and I don't mean go have a beer with and have inane conversations. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm talking about men in your life that you can go to and spill your guts if there's something that's bothering you, and men that'll tell you the truth, that won't sugarcoat it. If you don't have that, you need that. And I strongly recommend that you go find that. And one place you can find it is at Sovereign Man. You can go to our website, sovereignman.ca, and there's all kinds of info there you can check out, and you can find out how you can participate. You can come to any of our men's meetings for free. We got a bunch that we do over Zoom. or if you want to fly to Toronto, you can come to a live meeting. But the Zoom meetings are always available, and we let everybody come to at least one meeting free of charge as a guest to check out what it's like to be around good, solid, powerful men. And we force these men to learn. Every month there's a book of the month. You got to read it. You got to come in there and apply the lessons of the book to your life, and that's important in my view. And more men need to do that. Every man needs to do something like that.
Yeah, I like that. I agree 100%. And you know, you're also following principles that are important for all of us, period. All humans. We should never, you know, what's the quote? You know, show me a person's library and I'll tell you where their mind died. We need to be in good stuff, reading good stuff all the time, especially in this media driven world. You know what I mean? The real world, the street people out here, we got to know.
You would be shocked at how many good men come there to our program. Right now, we got 19 men that are in it, which is way too few. We need to grow that to 10,000. But there's men there who've come to me and said, I've read more books this year than since I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
There's men who've come to me and said, I haven't read a book in 5 years, and this year I've read 10. I'm like, oh my God. That's nothing to be proud of that you haven't read a book in 5 years, but I'm glad you read 10 books this year.
Well, I got a quote like Tremendous Jones. Have y'all ever heard of Tremendous Jones?
Charlie Tremendous Jones. Sure. He's awesome. I love that.
The best, man. And he says the only thing that's going to be different about us 5 years from now is how many friends we have and how many books we've read. And I love his book.
Hang around with and what books you read. That's it.
Yeah, that is so true. And he said that years ago. So that's awesome.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he really is. Hey, Nicky, you're awesome too, man. And I appreciate the work that you're doing. And I appreciate the wisdom in the business. You paired a lot of the things that we believe in our heart too, clearly about the right message to the right people, you know, at the right time. And as Tanya says, enough times. And that's what matters. You know, people got to get that dialed in if they want to take their business to higher levels. Here's something that we always ask our guests when they're on here. If our listeners had the freedom to visit anywhere in the world, which place would you recommend to them and why?
Anywhere in the world?
Anywhere in the world.
Man, that's easy. Jefferson Memorial. And read the immortal words from the Declaration of Independence. These truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I want everyone to stand there, feel the majesty of those words wash over them, and imbue them with a desire to live life as free men and women and go out there and use that freedom to create the type of life they always dreamed of, the type of life they deserved.
Man, that might be the best answer ever.
Bravo.
Ever.
That's beautiful.
Fantastic.
You're a beautiful
Nicky.
person, Nicky.
You are a beautiful
Thank
soul.
you so much.
Yes, sir.
Yes, you are. So on the sad note that we have to part here just temporarily, what is the best way for people to reach you, Nicky?
Do you mind if I tell one last story before we do that?
Of course. Yeah. I'm going to put this link up here for anybody who is watching this, video. The link is up here and we'll give it to you here in a moment.
So a few years ago, a lovely lady was introduced to us. I work with my lady too. Her name's Teresa. Y'all ought to have her on your show sometime. She's pretty special. She's
we'd love to.
Set 3 world records for running 12 hours on a treadmill. God bless her.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Just talk to her about that, Tanya. You and her.
Oh yeah, we can do that.
It'd be pretty cool. I think you ladies would get along. Anyways, this lady was introduced to us, and she had been the country director for Canada for one of the world's oldest and largest personal development firms. And she was very good. And she brought a man on to help her run the company whom she thought was very talented. And kind of like Steve Jobs back in the day when he brought John Scully to help him run Apple, just like Steve and John, at first they got along great, but after about a year or so, their visions of the future began to diverge and they started to clash. And just like Steve Jobs, she was kicked out of her own company. Oh my God. You think, how can you be kicked out of your own company? But she was bereft for a while, just lost. And someone told her, why don't you go talk to Nicky and Teresa? I think they might be able to help you out. So anyways, we met with her and, we loved on her. We poured into her. And we also saw her message needed to be tightened up. So we helped her dial in her message. We saw that she needed to be clear on who she helped and what problems she solved. So we helped to get all that figured out. And she was like, a consultant, right? Like a solopreneur. In her first month, she made $10,000 in profit. She was thrilled. In her second month, she made $12,000. In her third month, she made $18,000. In her fourth month, she made $62,200 in profit, which was wonderful for her for a single month, right? It was a great amount of money. And, she lives still in Ottawa. I live in Toronto. That's a 5-hour drive. And my eldest son plays soccer, or as I like to call it, the real football, because it's actually played with your feet.
Right.
So he had a tournament in Ottawa. She had a son his age. So I called her up and I said, hey, how would you and your son like to come watch a game at the tournament, maybe grab some lunch? And she said, that sounds wonderful. So they came, we all hung out. My son's team won the tournament. Everybody was happy. And then we ended up driving home. A few weeks later, we had one of our quarterly branded thought leader immersion workshops. This is where we show people how to become a branded thought leader. And we were at the part of the event where we show people how they can continue to work with us, the famous upsell, you know what I mean? And the way that we did that and still do that is I speak for a couple of minutes, then I have some of our people share what they're getting out of working with us, right? More effective than just having me ramble on. And so when it came time to say, who would like to share? She just bounded on stage, didn't wait for me to pick on her and said, me. I'm like, okay, great. And as soon as she got on stage, guys, she just started bawling, like crying, torrents. Her makeup was running. We had to get her like Kleenex. And like any red-blooded man faced with a crying woman, I panicked inside. What did I do wrong? Why is she mad at me? I mean, why is she crying? I maintained a calm and placid exterior, but that's what was going on inside my head. And then she turns to look at me, in between her sobs, she goes, Nicky, you didn't know this, but when you and your little son came to visit me and my little son, in that way little boys do, came to me and said, Mommy, who are we going to go meet? Who are we going to go meet? Tell me. And she goes, oh, we're going to go meet Nicky Billou and his son. And then she said, all of a sudden, my sweet little boy became very quiet, very serious, and said, oh, Mommy, are we going to meet the man who saved our family? And guys, I'm not a man who cries in public, but I started to cry. We hugged. And she said to me, Nicky, you didn't know this, but when I came to visit you the first time, the bank was about to foreclose on our home. I hadn't paid our mortgage in months. My husband and I were fighting every day like cats and dogs over money in front of our kids. They thought we were going to break up, and I wasn't so sure we were going to make it either. So you helping us deal with this financial thing, it saved our family.
Wow.
That's an incredible story. Incredible. What a note to leave on.
Somebody like her to jump on my appointment calendar. That's why I wanted to tell you the story first. Somebody who's hurting, and if you're looking for somebody to talk to you and listen, I'd be honored to do that for you.
Beautiful.
That is beautiful. We encourage anybody, click on the link right there and talk to Nicky.
We're going to put it in the show notes too,
put it
guys.
in the show notes and make sure everybody knows about it.
Yeah. What a fabulous story to end on, Nicky.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story and your time with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate the work that you're out there doing too. And we parrot it right back to you. And thank you so much.
I appreciate you guys doing what you do and bringing me on the show. This was absolutely tremendous. Thank you.
Yes. And we'll have to have Teresa on too. That would be great.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah,
it would.
Hey, thank you guys for listening. Here at BrandFace, we do this for prosperity. When we talk about prosperity, we're not just talking about money. We're talking about a true 360 of the abundant life that we truly wish for every one of y'all. We know that prosperity favors the bold. So we say be bold, folks, especially with your brand. All right. Thank you, Mr. Nicky, and thank you, Ms. Tanya.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Brought to you by BrandFace, the only comprehensive personal brand building system across the globe.